Hey, my name's Rajesh. I'm a multifamily lender based in Los Angeles, and today we're going to be looking at this 5 unit in Redondo Beach, which, if you're not from LA or the South Bay, it's a pretty desirable beach city to live and rent in. Not quite as popular or desirable as, let's say, Hermosa Beach or Manhattan Beach, but for retirees and families, Redondo Beach is a pretty desirable area. Um, this property looks pretty nice, actually. You can see the little basketball hoop there. Uh, Property looks well maintained. Um, let's see here. I like that black knob. I like those black fixtures there. Not a fan of those lights. This vanity looks like a pretty cheap standard MDF uh, cabinet. Um, Flooring LVP most likely. Nice black, nice satin black finish fan. Rooms look decent, well taken care of. It's got in-unit washer dryers. Overall, yeah, this looks like a pretty good deal, but a pretty good building. Now, does that mean it is worth um, $2.8 million? And we can see here that the NOI is 132,696, almost 133,000. I'm going to see here what the gross rents are if they even mention that. So they've got a 3 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. No, let's see here. Let's break out the notepad to keep this sort of simple. So 1 bedroom, one 3 bedroom, one 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and three 2 bedrooms. 2 bed, 1 bath. This looks like 2 bath, and this is 2 bath. So let's see what the average rents are for this, and then we can figure out what the NOI will be going backwards as well. So let's see here. 3 bedroom is 4675. 4675. The 2 bed is 3200, and the 1 bed is 2295. So 2 bed, 1 bath. It doesn't differentiate here between 2 beds and 2 bath and 1 bath. So let's say 3200 as well, times 3. Oh, let's see, times 1. That way we can keep it all nice and lined up. 4675, 3200, and 9600 roughly. So that gives us a grand total of 4675 plus 3200 plus 9600, 17475. 475. So let's say that's our gross rents. Okay, that's the gross rents potential. And regarding this, it says our NOI is 132, but our pro forma NOI is 138,216. equal to 132,696 divided by 12 is equal to 696 divided by 12 is equal to 11,058. Pro forma NOI is equal to 138,216. 138,216. Yep. 138,216 divided by 12. 11,518. 11,518 per month. Okay. So that means we have to figure out property taxes and insurance. So this is a 5-unit. 2850, 2.85. 2.85. There's a 5-unit, 0 vacant. Gross rents were 17,475. 17,475. 0 vacant rents. So our qualified gross rents are 17,475. I'll tell you how I'm calculating property taxes. It's 1.25% of the purchase price. Landlord insurance is $1,100 per unit per year. So that's $8,800. So let's see what that looks like here. Sorry, 5,500. 5,500 divided by 12 is 458. Now these are water, gas, electric. Now if we look at the water, gas, electric, trash, property management, maintenance, pest control, legal, advertising, and our net operating income based off of that is 10,177. So if we go again, do the backwards calculation here, we see that we're at an actual NOI of 11,058. So we need to figure out how to add roughly $900 here per month. So let's say if we just reduce this to 800 per month. So now we're at 11,125. Probably $70 too much. So let's see here. 875. 1150. Not too bad, not too far off. And let's see what that looks like. And I put this as a DSC underwriting calculator, but you can better think of this calculator as a minimum down payment calculator. What's your minimum down payment going to be based on the facts of this property? And if we go for a bank loan, like let's say Chase or Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whatever, for commercial multifamily, they're going to require a net DSCR ratio of 1.2, which means you take your net operating income and divide it by the monthly debt service payments, or P&I, and at their given interest rate. And with them, you'd have to put down about $1.2 million, or roughly 45%, because your max LTV is 55%. So you're going to have to put 45% down, and then at the end of all that, you're going to cash flow about $1,800 a month. Wow. So that doesn't really sound like a good deal right now. So let's see what it is with the normal DSCR loan. Now, with the DSCR loan, we only require a 1.0 DSCR ratio, which just means, and this is a gross DSCR ratio. So the way we calculate that is we look at our gross rents and we divide that by the entire debt service. Not worried about all the other operating expenses besides property taxes and landlord insurance. So what that means is we take principal, interest, property taxes, and landlord insurance combined on a monthly basis, and that is the denominator. So that means we divide the gross rents by the PITI payments. And if that equals to 1, you're able to buy the property, you're able to get the funding, even if on in practical terms, that means you're not cash flowing. On this, that means you're losing about $3,000 a month. And your interest rate would be 8.25 versus the bank loan of 5.875, but you're only having to put down $980,000, or roughly $300,000 less than you would on a bank loan. Now let's see what happens if you're able to get a 1.15 ratio, right? So your down payment is roughly the same, 1.28 million versus 1.3 million. Your interest rate is going to be much lower. It's going to be closer to 6.99%, 1.2 or 1.15. And let me correct that, because now your down payment has changed, even though your gross DSCR ratio has stayed the same, and that's because the interest rate has changed down from 8.25 to 6.99. But the only way to get that 6.99 interest is if you're hitting a 1.15 DSCR ratio, gross DSCR ratio, and that means you have to put down at least 1.08 million, which is still roughly $200,000, $210,000 cheaper than a bank loan. Now, based on that, you get the privilege of losing only $724 a month instead of cash flowing $1,800 cash flow every month. Now, let's say you decide to buy down the interest rate to 5.875%, right? For that, you still need a minimum 1.1 DSCR ratio. Now you're only having to put down $743,000, which is roughly $550,000 less than you would over here, but your cash flow, you're losing $1,400 a month, which is almost the same as you would be positively cash flowing over here. If we go to interest only, now you see the real benefit of the DSCR loan, because your minimum down payment is $743,000, and your minimum down payment here is $1.293 million. So again, about $550,000 difference. You're still cash flowing $739. You're not quite hitting $1,000 a month yet, but your interest rate is 5.875. And yeah, I did say you had to buy down the interest rate, but when purchasing a property, it's always great to get seller credits and seller concessions and get them pay for your discount points for you in the form of seller concessions. So let's see what happens when we go interest only on a bank loan, right? 2 here. So when we go 1.2 here, and this is just so we go apples to apples, right? When we go 1.2 DSCR ratio, even if we're on interest only, they're still calculating based on PITI, not just or rather they're still calculating based on net operating income, and they're still looking at P&I payments, not just interest only payments, just to calculate their DSCR ratio. So you still have to put down a down payment of 1.293 million, just because you still have to hit that 1.2 ratio calculated as if you were doing principal and interest payments. But the benefit is that you're cash flowing almost $3,500 a month, or $3,432 to be exact. So we look at this and we're saying, all right, I only have to put down $712,000. I'm cash flowing $585, which is jack. To be honest with you, it's not even $1,000 a month. But what's the play here? This is a 5-unit building, which means you can probably put 5 ADUs on this building and start cash flowing even more. You can increase the cap rate significantly. You can turn this into a 5-unit building into a 10-unit building, just to phrase it more clearly. And so what we want to see here is whether there's actually room to do that. And it doesn't look like there is, because you're still going to need off-street parking. You could maybe convert that garage into a unit. That will turn it into 6 units. And we do see another parking space here. And that looks like an entrance to another unit, so you cannot put another unit there. I'm wondering if you were able to build like a bridge here, you might be able to put a unit here, but that there are windows there. And if they don't have windows on the other side, or if those are bedrooms, then you wouldn't be able to put a unit there. And you still need to follow setback rules. So that means any space behind the garage, you would not be able to turn into a unit either. So you're only probably able to turn this into a 6 unit place. And let's say you turn that into a 1 unit or a studio, right? So let's see what this looks like. So 2.85, right? That's 28.5, too many zeros. We got all this right. What did we say for property management? We said we're going with roughly 8%. 1398 is 8%. So we're going to 8% on the property management. Down payment costs, what did we say here? We said, we said 25% down. Wow. Okay, so we're staying there. We're going interest only for 10 years, which means after 10 years you had to pay a balloon payment of roughly 712. That doesn't make sense. Oh, this is down payment, so let me invert that. There we go. Rehab loan, you probably need about 150,000 to convert that into a garage. So let's say 175,000. Let's say 200,000, just to be safe. Okay, we get maybe 10.25% on that because it's construction loan. Loan term would be 30 years. Interest only period in months, 12. Prepaids, no, we don't really need to worry about that. Balloon payment due of 200,000. Yearly inflation. Now here's what I want to figure out: the yearly appreciation. Redondo Beach, yearly appreciation, properties past 30 years on average. So while that loads, we will figure out vacancy. I'm going to put about 10% because you're professionally managing this thing. Actually, if you're professionally managing this thing, your vacancy rate's going to be closer to 8%. Still loading. This 10-year data, which is 5.51. South Bay coastal context between 5 to 7, 5.8 over the past 30 years. Yeah, so let's say 5.8. rental inflation. Now do rental inflation over same time period for same area. Yearly inflation, let's say 3.29, 3.3. According to 2019, it showed 5.1, but for LA in general, we're looking at 3.2%. So anywhere between 3.0 and 5.0. So let's just go with a flat 4.0. Two, 8, 5, 1, 3, 4. And then we know we have 5 units, right? And what did we say the gross rents were? We said the gross rents were 17,475. And we got to divide that by 5. 17,475 divided by 5 gives us about 34.95 per unit. Hazard insurance, we said about $5,500 a year. Let's see, let's pull these numbers from here. So we're saying water is 65, 20, 80. 65, 20, 80. Gas, water, electric. Oh, this flipped. So water is 65 and gas is 20. Let's see, lawn and snow. Is that included here? Maintenance, property management, probably in there. So let's see, $250 for trash. We're putting this here. Pest control, what did I say here? $180 for pest control. Advertising is $10. Maintenance is $875. This is actually $1607 because it's taking 10% of gross rents. No, it's taking 8%, right? Yeah, it's taking 8%. So we're looking at net operating income of not quite the 132. So I got to figure out how to lower this. So let's see here. What if we do this? Let's change this maintenance to 4% and see how that affects it. Net operating income is no, yeah, that's the issue right there. So property management is showing up as 1286 because we're factoring the vacancies into the gross rents. So let's look at maintenance. This is the issue here. So let's see, this was B68. Okay. B17. What is B17? Okay, it's factoring it into the regular inflation costs. So let's say this was actually 5%. Maintenance here is 875. That's pretty close. We're still at net operating income of 119, which is still lower than what we should be getting. So let's see if we just drop this to 4,400. Now 3,300. my goal here is to get the net operating income to be 131, which is what they're showing. 132,696. As close to that as possible. Now, of course, they might be overly optimistic without calculating the vacancies into there, but I still gotta cover that in there. Wow. Okay, so let's see 0. Yeah, that's not working. So how are they getting that? Let's see. What if I just put 0 here? Okay, and then I put 0 there. Now I'm close to it. Okay. So they must have counted property taxes way less. So 132 over there. And so let's say what our cash flow looks like here. We're negative the first year, negative the second year. Fifth year, we start turning a profit. And at the end of 30 years, we've made a grand total of $456,000 net cash flow. Which honestly, considering LA properties, is not bad. And you get to write all this off. So you show negative net income or a loss for the first 20 years. On your 30th year, you're looking at maybe a $50,000 profit. And that's in $2055, which means that's like 5,000 today. So let's see at what point this is a good property to exit from. So let's see here. We're losing money every single year we decide to sell, right? 10th year. 20th year, you get to not even break even or not even double your profits, right? So you're at 2.2 million net profit after you exit in 20 years. In 30 years, you're at roughly 7.88 if you were to just deduct your base cash flow for that year. But when you factor in the cash flow that you made over all the 30 years and you factor that in here into your gains, you're actually walking away with $8.1 million, which is a 941% cash on cash return, which is roughly, it looks like you're maybe almost 10xing your original investment of $700,000. Oh, that's right. I forgot to do the loan information, the rehab loan. So let's see what that rehab loan, when we zero it out, what it looks like, okay? What these numbers look like here. So now it's actually looking better because now you don't have that extra weight that you're carrying off the rehab loan, the $200,000. So at the end of 30 years, you get to walk away with $9.5 million, which is roughly 10x your initial investment of $712,000. So let's see what happens if we actually turn this into a 6 unit, and we're going to put in the 200,000 right there. 12 months. We want to see what this is going to be worth after we take it up to 6 units. So let's see here. Average value of 6 unit multifamily in Redondo. Well, actually, let's get the zip code here. 90278. 90278. So they're saying between $3.5 to $4 million. roughly maybe 3.8 to 4.6. So if we were to convert that, I would say under market right here, 3.8 million. So if you were to spend roughly $200,000 on this, you would get a $3.8 million building according to ChatGPT. But let's be conservative. Let's be really conservative and say it's a $3.5 million. And now we've got 6 units, right? And we also said that this was our gross operating income, but let's see what happens if we go with one more studio or 1 bedroom. So $22.95 for a 1 bedroom. 1 bed, 1 bath, $22.95 times 1 is equal to $22.95. And we figure that out by doing this. So $22.95 plus 17475, 1977 or 19,770 gross rents potential. And let's see what that looks like on a monthly basis. 19970 or per unit basis. So 3328. So this actually drops the average from 34.95 to 33.28, but the benefit is, of course, that the property is going to be worth a lot more when you sell, about $3 million more, $12.7 million. So you're getting a 14x cash on cash return. You're 14xing your original $700,000 investment. Let's see cash flow. You're cash flowing every single year at that point. And let's say you refinance, right? After you fix it up, you refinance. You do it at $3.5 million. So now you have zero loan amount over there. You get the 5.875. Let's see what your equity would need to be. Let's say you're at maybe, and you're not taking any cash out, right? So $712,000 plus, sorry, let's see how to figure this out. So we got 2.85 plus the $200,000 loan amount minus 712,500, I believe. Yep. So that ought to give you equity of about 2.337500 divided by 3.5 million. 123. So that's 66%. So that looks like minus 1 is equal to 33.2. So that's your equity interest in the property right now. And you're not going interest only. You're going to go fully amortized now. And let's see what this property looks like at the end of after you do the refi, you're going to be losing money for the first 2 years. Your 5th year is when you start turning a profit. Net income, good, you're showing losses. And at your exit, after 30 years, you're showing an exit of $12.3 million, and you're 10xing your original cash on cash return, your original cash investment, which was $712,000. Or in this case, they're showing $1.162 million. So $1.1 million turns into $12 million. That's about a 10x return. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good investment, but you had to wait 30 years to do it. So the real question is this worth it? As I've done in previous videos, I'm going to do a comparison to the stock market now, and let's see what that looks like. So compound interest calculator, and we're just going to copy this number here, the 1.162 million. Monthly contribution, you got to make the same monthly contribution, which is the monthly payments, $13,830. Time of length in years, 30. And let's say S&P 500 doesn't pay any dividends, 10% on average. Interest rate variation annually, let's say 9%, okay? Because over the past 30 years, it's between 7 to 10 or 8 to 10%. So that's $38 million. But you have to make that $13,000, that $14,000 a month every month. And that, what does that add up to? That roughly adds up to $5 million, 4.987. So let's see what that actually becomes. We go 1.162 million plus 4,978,855, and we should get the same answer here. Edit, copy. So if we make 0 monthly contributions, wow, this is even better. So if you just take 6 million and put it in the stock market and never make another contribution, you're making about $81 million here over 30 years, supposedly. Over here, you're putting in 1.162 million and never making another contribution other than these first two payments right here. And probably for the third and fourth years as well before you start barely breaking even on your fifth year. So this ends up being $30,000. Let's say over that time it ends up being, I don't know, 100,000. Again, just to be conservative, because this is trending downwards. So if we were to double that, that would be 60,000. So if we look at, we follow a downwards trend towards 0 and then goes upwards here. So let's see, years 3 and 4, 60,000. Yeah, let's say 60,000. So we add 60,000 to this, right? And then we go 0 contributions here, 30 years, 9%. Let's increase this by 60,000. So 2, I believe, yeah. So we get 16 million here. So if you were to just take this money and put it in the stock market, you're honestly still better off than this property here. You're getting 12 million here, you're providing housing, you're not having to reinvest your own money because this pays for itself. But if you were to just take that lump sum of cash and put it in the stock market, over 30 years, you're still doing better than the 12 million you would get here. So in order to equal out, what do we need to see here? So let's see this yearly appreciation. What if it was 7%, right? What does that look like? Now you're at $18.2 million. So at 7%, now you're winning. Now you're winning. So you need to sort of analyze the areas where you buy these properties as well, and figure out what they appreciated at over the past 30 years, past 100 years, not just the past 5 years. Doing so will save you a lot of heartache because 30 years is a long time. And if you're going to hold something, whether it's this or stocks, the S&P 500, for example, you're going to want something that is worth it, and that is the best use of your money. So realtors, please keep this in mind when selling these properties and pricing them, because right now they're just not making a lot of sense, and as a result we are going to see prices come down. And again, this is very optimistic because we're showing zero operating costs here besides the property taxes and property management and maintenance costs, just to hit that supposed NOI that was shown right here. And that definitely does affect things. So just be very, very conscious of that, because some of these buildings just don't make sense in their pricing. And unless it's part of like an acquisition where you're going to be destroying this whole building and putting up like 12, 15 units, I cannot imagine how this would make sense to a normal investor, unless you're going for like the monopoly strategy, you know, where you're just like buying everything and then you can jack up rents as you please because there is no other choice, there is no other game in town. Like, let's say you own this multifamily, the building next door, the building next door. Let's say you owned all the buildings on the street, and now renters have no choice but to rent from you, and you control the rents, basically. You determine the market rate. And by doing so, you're also doing these new constructions, which allows you to increase it significantly above the current market rates. So that's one strategy, and then I would see this purchase making absolute sense, but it's going to be very expensive to do and beyond the scope of my current wheelhouse. Not to say I can't do it, not to say I will not get into that in the future, but just based on my current wheelhouse and my current in-house capabilities, I would be looking at this as just a normal buy and rent and maybe add an ADU. Buying all these properties, breaking them down and turning it into one, probably you'd need a much bigger PUD financer for that. One thing that I could do though, however, is let's say you bought this building, the building next door, the building next door, the building next door, and assume they all had the same seller. I could do a mezzanine loan or a portfolio loan and get you all those buildings individually. And now you're again still going after that monopoly strategy and dominating this corner or this street. Anyway, I hope that was educational. Thank you for your time.